Celtics Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtic Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics. I'm your host, Justin Poole, and joining me, as always, John Duke. And John, I don't know if you remember, last week we made some predictions, and we thought, oh, maybe John won't go undefeated this week, and then he does go undefeated this week. Except the Celtics did not. And I'm not proud, right? I'm not happy that the Celtics put up a loss against the Spurs, but it was, I think I said, I don't think Kawhi's going to be back, but I don't think it's going to matter. LaMarcus Aldridge kind of bullied in the paint, especially about midway through the second quarter and on. They really didn't have an answer for it. We also only predicted through Sunday night, but with the game on tap against the Bulls, on Monday night, we decided to wait and broadcast, so everybody's going to get this release on, or I should say the Bulls game was Tuesday night, we're correct? And everybody's going to get this broadcast on Wednesday morning. See, I've already lost track of the days. It's busy
Monday.
This holiday season.
Bulls were Monday, and Pistons were Sunday. So
yeah,
it's okay. It's all right. It's all good, man.
So we wait a night.
Right.
I think I have it together. Maybe. But we wait a night. We wait an extra night, squeeze that game in. So there was no prediction for the Bulls game. I think it would be safe to say there was no way either of us would have known that Kyrie was going to be out. There's no chance in hell that either of us would have predicted that the Celtics would have lost to the Bulls. So safe to say that if we had predicted through then, it would have been a 3-1 and a 4-0 prediction. And the Celtics go 2-2. Is this a skid? Is this the toughest stretch of the Celtics season to date?
Well, it's definitely the toughest stretch of the Celtics season to date. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, this is what's concerning about that is that it's the beginning of the toughest stretch of the Celtics season to date. And so that's probably the biggest concern of that is not only are they struggling a bit as a team, but I think really it's more about the injuries that are piling up and perhaps some of that is self-inflicted or at least the desire of Brad to pull guys out. And I think, is how hurt is Kyrie? If this wasn't the stretch that we were looking at, would Kyrie have played against the Bulls? I suspect the answer is yes, for the same reason that Horford will sit Wednesday night against Denver, but more than likely probably would play if it was an important game and it wasn't this insane stretch of games that the Celtics are looking at. I think that it was kind of interesting too against the Bulls because, we've always seen Brad. They've always been, since he's been here, he's been the type of coach who has said there's no excuses. You play the schedule that you have, and they had the incredible success on the back end of back-to-back, and even on the road. So it seemed weird that what they done against the Bulls was kind of a departure and saying, well, we're going to rest this guy, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And that really wasn't the way that Brad has operated or managed this team really since the time he arrived here. And to see him now doing that, I wonder if that kind of set some sort of strange message into the psyche because that was a team that really didn't compete against the Bulls at all. It was a pretty tough watch. I thought the Pistons game was tough to watch, but the Bulls game was doubly bad. And so
it hasn't been fun basketball just from an entertainment standpoint. I mean, right. it really hasn't been a ton. Now, watching Portis drain threes, I'm not going to lie, he was a guy that I think you and I talked about heavily heading into that draft that we thought the Celtics were in love with. Here's a grit guy, energy guy, probably won't be an all-star or anything, but somebody you'd love to have on the roster. And now he's draining threes, and that whole work ethic is still out there. Everybody with the Bulls organization talking about it. So it was interesting to see him, come from that level as a prospect to what he was lighting up the Celtics. But again, not a full-strength Celtics team. Marcus Smart got the start but he didn't do a bad job. But I don't know that we saw him light the world on fire like we expected him to in the starting lineup. Kidding, tongue in cheek to some degree, right? A couple of weeks ago, you and I calling for him to be in the starting lineup, but
Yep.
really the basis of that was that he would be in the starting lineup with a healthy starting lineup, and that the way that he would be a facilitator with all the other shooters on the floor would be a nice matchup for him. So I don't think that Bulls game was really much of a test of our theory by any means. And then, Marcus Morris has been struggling, and he was pretty, even when he was putting the minutes up there, that whole week since we last sat here and talked was not a good week for him, even maybe a couple of games leading up to our last show. And now, he's going to be out, I guess, indefinitely, right? There's no real set timetable for him. And I think that's a big hit to the depth. They've won games early in the year without, with multiple injuries, but I think they might be hitting a point where the issue is, can they rest enough people not to get into one of those bad cycles? Because once one guy goes down and another guy goes down, then the minutes go up, and also the effort goes up just to try to scrap wins with players that are out there that maybe aren't as NBA ready as others. And that's when, you kind of get a little concerned that, sure, you're worried about win-loss records, but even more so, is this going to end up being a vicious cycle with injuries and a revolving door throughout the year?
Yeah, and I think, a lot of us have been perhaps a bit unkind to Marcus Morris. Not really, I think, fully appreciating the injury that he's dealing with. Part of the problem for him, of course, is that there's a bit of redundancy, in part not to his veteran status, but in terms of what he provides, and that Tatum, a lot of us see that as a bit of a duplicative skill set. But having said that, the scoring and the ability he had on the bench to be a veteran who could get his shot and was quite productive in that role is going to cause a really big problem for the Celtics here. I think if he's out, there were some reports it could be up to 2 months. If that's the case,
yeah,
really
redundant in position, but not.
That's concerning.
It is concerning, and it's redundant in position, not redundant in veteran status. And that's really what they need. They need more of those veterans. I mean, he was hitting some pretty big shots. That's what I mean about it tailing off. His shot wasn't falling maybe the last week and a half, and I was getting disappointed with him. I almost feel like this injury makes it understandable. Yeah, I don't really not happy about the injury. He didn't start the year, and then you get some minutes, and you almost wonder if he was, fully able to get conditioned to start the year. But either way, he didn't start the year, and then, we just traded Avery Bradley for this guy. So you're hoping that at the very least he gets it right by the playoffs, because I have a feeling that if this team wants to go deep, that he's got a major role in that. It won't be as a starter, but significant contributions off the bench have to be made by Morris to dictate the end result of the postseason if they don't make any kind of midseason trades.
Yeah, no question about it. He's a vital cog at this point, and it will be interesting to see what they do with the disabled player exception, because I think if Morris is out for an extended period, I would think that Danny would want to pull the trigger on somebody to fill that DPE slot sooner than later. They have passed the deadline where they could flip that person. So he may wait. He may wait until, say, after the London trip and try to do something there. But with so many games in such a short period of time, they really do need to take advantage of that situation the best they can. And if you don't have Marcus Morris, I'm not even sure that this player you'd pick up has to be that kind of 3-4 swing position. But I think you got to have somebody who can put the ball in the basket. And, a guy like a Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, who's probably too old for that role now. But, someone like that, some instant offense. A lot of us talking about Will Barton, a guy who may get a look at against, the Denver Nuggets here. There's a number of those guys who might be available in those expiring contracts. But I feel like they're going to have to pull the trigger on something. I'd like to see them wait as much as they can, but it kind of dovetails with my belief that Gordon Hayward is coming back in the month of April anyway.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
so
don't
really
get ahead of
need to
yourself. We're going to get to that for sure. Don't get ahead of yourself. That's
Bury
going to
the
be a
lead.
big meat and potatoes of this show. So before we jump into that, I have one other little side note, then we could dive into Hayward. But first, just a station sort of identification, I guess. I don't really know. But follow Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live. You can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke. The entire CLNS Media Network at CLNS Media. The Facebook page, facebook.com/CLNS fans. Download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace, and the YouTube channel for high-definition, full-length locker room interviews, the Garden Report, the Round Table, and others, including us. You can now see a clip from the podcast regularly on the YouTube channel, so make sure you go and check that out. The part I wanted to bring up, John, before we dive into Hayward, because obviously that's going to be a big one, and even if he's 50% coming off the bench, if he's safe to play, I'm down with it, so we'll tease it that way. But what is, and you know, there is no bigger fan than Justin Poulin. What is up with Jaylen Brown going into the spin move and falling down? That's like 3 times in a week and a half he's gone into that spin move and wound up on his hiney.
It's the rec specs, man. It's the rec specs. They're not working for him.
It's so funny because what I was just thinking the other day, like what this team needs is more headgear. And then and then finally Kyrie gets his off. Like somebody needs braces, right? Or pre-braces. You know, get that big headgear on and everything. So do they even do headgear anymore, by the way? Like, I don't even think that's a thing.
I'm soon to find out, I
when
think.
You and I, your kids are getting older, but when you and I were growing up, headgear was like, oh, man, why would you wish this on anybody? Kiss me. It's just, it's like, you're hitting that age where everybody wants to pretend to date and everything, and the headgear comes on. It's like, they want to put headgear. They wanted to put headgear on me, and I was like, no way, dude. And they go, we have 2 options. We can do headgear, or we can pull 7 teeth out of your face. And I said, pull the 7 teeth out of my face.
That was a good call on your part.
It was a very good call, but then I got the braces from 8th grade to senior year, so it still didn't save me.
Oh, wow.
Brutal.
Wow. That's
so
a
there's
long time.
I
had 4 years, and I thought that was bad enough, and I did have the headgear, but I would never wear it out in public. Are you kidding? Never, ever out in public.
So Jaylen Brown's wearing headgear. Kyrie Irving's wearing headgear. I think it came off for both of them now, right? Didn't Jaylen Brown get out of his goggles at this point?
Earlier than he's supposed to, I think, but he just said to hell with it.
Had enough.
Yeah, he couldn't see, and I guess the first night he had really clear vision, but he has no peripheral vision, and so they tried a different set, and that didn't. It was foggy, and it's been one problem after another. I think the best thing is get him back to normal. Let's just get back everything. No implements, no items, no appendices, just ball, I mean, I think that's
with
issue.
Like a Darth Vader mask on or something. If they could all come out with, like, do it right. Everybody come out with Darth Vader masks. That would be beautiful. The Force Awakens. God. So,
yes.
Or no, that's not the new one. That was the first. That was the first one of the last one. Now, yeah, exactly. Well,
Thursday night.
It's the holiday year here. I mean, the holiday season. Here we go. I definitely want to see that one.
The nerds have lost their headgear, but they're still going to see Star Wars in their 40s. Bam!
Amen. So we'll tie it all together for you, folks. Oh, no way. For those of you watching on YouTube, this probably won't even make the clip, but the lightsaber.
No, of course not. Why would you run this?
Is excellent. If you could have done that with headgear on, it would have been fantastic.
I feel like I would have gone viral.
So anyway,
sorry.
Obviously, the goggles were causing him some sort of, imbalance, like literally throwing him off, because I just, it's not like him to just fall down like that. It was really bizarre because it happened 3 times. He went. It's almost like he didn't know where the basket was, and he tried to correct and just got crossed up with his legs. I don't know. Very out of character. I mean, we've definitely seen him go into a move around the rim and not know what he's going to do with it before, but
Yeah.
not like literally just spin to the ground like a cyclone. That was like really bizarre.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. Now, yeah, I don't know what that's. I mean, I'm going to just chalk a lot of that up for the rec specs and hope that that's just something we won't see anytime soon. But that it does. Now that you say that, it does become a bit reminiscent of him going to the hole and really not having much of a plan. And that those are the possessions that concern me the most about Jalen. And so, but I'm going to put it aside because of the rec specs, and let's see how he is with his, although I don't know that he can still wear contacts, so he's kind of playing with, basically blind at this point. So that's not so great either.
Are you concerned that there's going to be some slippage here in the standings and some wins losses at this point? And I don't mean necessarily just that they might have you had to know that they were going to slip somewhere along the way. I mean, you just don't sustain that level of success without, some depth and full strength roster that we were hoping for at the beginning of the year. So it's not so much are you concerned that they'll put up some losses through the holidays, etc. It's more, are you concerned about the implications of the postseason? Like, how important do you think home court advantage is going to be? We'll get to the Hayward piece of this in just a moment, but
Yeah, right.
but I'm kind of setting the table for that discussion. So, how important is that home court advantage? Do you think they just need to get there, and then depending on the health of the team, they'll have success, or do you think that home court advantage is like crucial?
I don't think it's crucial. I think that. I mean, let's be honest here. I think this is a 2-team race at this point in the East. I think Toronto's tough. I think Milwaukee could become something. I think Washington will be better than they've been, especially with Wall returning.
You didn't say Detroit. I'm surprised you didn't say Detroit.
No way.
Do you think that's just
No way.
early season success and it'll fall off?
No way. Well, they lost 5 in a row. I mean, they're 7 in a row now, actually. I mean, they're not the team. They're not the droids we're looking for. Okay. This is brought to you by
brought to you by Headgear and Star Wars. Yes, absolutely.
That's right. But I mean, they're a 500 team at this point. I mean, I think Detroit is a playoff team. I just don't think that they're that good. I think their high watermark was that for the game in Boston where they just shot the lights out. So no, I don't see Detroit in that mix. I think it's Boston, it's Cleveland, maybe Toronto and Washington, just like we always thought it would be. Now I think the question is, can you win? Can you win that 7th game in Cleveland? And I think you can win that 7th game in Cleveland. I think that is. I think that's really the perfect story book piece for Kyrie Irving. Look, LeBron James is amazing, and they're going to have
that Game 7 shot just like against Golden State. I see.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and you end the LeBron era like that. I mean, is there a better story for LeBron and for Kyrie to end the LeBron era? I mean, that's ready-made, man. I love that idea. So, I think they can win in Cleveland.
The only thing better would be if it was
if
it was a Kyrie Irving alley-oop to Hayward because he's healthy. That would be an amazing way to end the LeBron era. Yes. Because remember, the knock on Kyrie was whether or not he could direct the offense and pass, and then just wrap that around with the fact that Hayward went down 5 minutes into the year on an alley-oop, and that would just show how bold Hayward would be. I mean, I don't suspect we'll see him go up for an alley-oop for a while, but it would be a poignant way to cap a Game 7 on the road against Cleveland and Isaiah Thomas. Don't forget about Isaiah.
Well, I'm trying to, actually. I don't like to think about the fact that Isaiah's playing for the Cavs. I'm just trying to fast forward to the time when he's playing for somebody else. because I want to root for him and I want to root for his team, but I just can't do it when he's a Cav. And
Right.
unfortunately,
Isaiah, rescue yourself. Rescue yourself at the end of this year, please. Do us a favor.
Right. We'll offer him the full MLE to come here. I don't think that's a big enough break.
You know, it will be interesting to see what happens with his contract here at his age and not having played this season. You know, it's funny because, and we'll finish this thought. We'll do our mid-show break and then we'll come back and talk about Hayward. But it is interesting to think about the narrative that we had going about how the Cavaliers were just destroying his career, but that is dead now. The fact that he hasn't played to this point in the season, whatever damage they may have done public relations wise, the fact that he's not on the floor is going to do the same amount of damage, regardless of how the offseason went.
Yeah, I think that the the damage is done. I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting to see how narratives change or don't change. You know, when you get to this point in the year, we're near the end of December, nearing the end of December, and a lot of people think that this isn't even a part of the season that counts. You know, really the season starts after Christmas. I think there's a lot of basketball, a lot of interesting things that happen in the first, in this case, now 10 weeks of the season.
It's over a third of the season's in the books, and the Celtics have 23 wins. So they're essentially halfway to 50, a third of the way through the season. I mean, that's the best way I can look at that and kind of characterize it. So, I mean, a couple more wins, and that'll be the case. And so they're on pace for 50+, and given the injury and given all of that, that's pretty – I mean, if they end – what did I predict, 55 again this year? And I think you went, what? Did you leapfrog? No, you went under. I think you still went 53, 54. Didn't you? I can't remember. We'll have to look back at our predictions. But, I'm pretty sure I said 55, 56. And so now I think there's no way they wouldn't have hit that if Hayward was healthy, right? So might have even performed above that. Might have even pushed for 60. Now I'm thinking if they can turn in, and they're on pace to still – I know it's different the second half of the season, and I know we're running into these injury bumps. But if they could, if they continue at this pace, it's not out of the question that they could still finish pretty close to 53 to 55 wins. It's not out of the question at all.
No, you're right. That they're within that range, and I was, I think you're kind of going back and thinking about what we were talking about. There was a lot of concern or thought at that time that somehow. That we'd have difficulty trying to find a way to get this team to the same level even as they were last year because of the additions on the bottom of the bench. Never mind Hayward, never mind, addition. Really looking at the bench and saying, well, if they could just maintain this year, they'll be okay. But next year, they'd take that steep step forward. Of course, they go on a monster winning streak like that, things change. But at least on our views of things, I think we were still looking at the 56, 57 wins. I think we were fairly close to each other in what we were looking at. So, look, I think you reestablish, you kind of reevaluate where you were and what you thought. And I think we all have to agree that the kids, in particular Tatum, still shooting at historically high levels from three-point range, unprecedented levels. That's just something that you cannot plan for. And the question is, talk about keeping the pace up. Can a guy like Tatum keep the pace up of shooting 50% from the three-point range? I don't know that that's possible, but I'd love to see him try.
Man, when's the last time a rookie averaged more than 50% from beyond the arc, especially on a contending team?
Never. It's never happened.
I think it's absolutely never.
I think it's less than 10 guys who've made 50 period in a season. I could be wrong about that, but I think
we'll have to go look it up. But that is, it's insane. It's insane. I mean, he definitely gets the attention drawn away from him, and every time they question him, he's quick to mention that. But it really would be a phenomenal rookie season, and I know that there are others ahead of him in the Rookie of the Year voting, and it's probably going to go down like that. But he just if he shoots above 50% from beyond the arc for 82 games, He deserves major consideration anyway. Major consideration. So, all right, we're going to take the quick break here. We're going to tell you about DraftKings, but just stay tuned with us because we'll be back and we'll be talking about Gordon Hayward and towards the end of the season and what Jon has been saying since about 3 nights after the injury. So, listen up, Hoops fans. Basketball season is a third of the way through, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes have fallen off to the demise of the Boston Celtics' success, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test and win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends. They've even got beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill sets. The best part, you get to draft a new team each and every single day, and drafting a team is arguably the best part of fantasy. Actually, it's not arguably, it really is the best part of fantasy, Jon. The only thing better, winning cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry into $1,000. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com. That will be free with your first deposit for a share in $10,000 in total prizes. That's tonight. Don't wait. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can seriously cash in. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for more details. Let's talk Hayward, Jon.
Let's do it.
It's finally come to a point where we can legitimately start to have this conversation. I know we teased it. I know we threw it out there. And both of us were hopeful and certainly weren't ruling it out. But I think everybody was putting the brakes on that, from the team to the media, et cetera, saying, hey, you know what, we're pretty much going to shut him down for the season. They did get the exception approved, as you mentioned earlier in the show, and elected not to use it right away. But now there's conversation, there's dialogue. There were hints 2 weeks ago. We mentioned it on the show. But now in an interview, I believe, with the Globe, correct me if I'm wrong, Jon, but I'm pretty sure it was the Globe. So looking like Hayward's actually thinking it might be a possibility.
I'm saving the I told you so's, not to you, but to others. I mean, there was a lot of people.
You're saving it until it's real because you don't want to dive too deep, right? I can see where you're going.
We know. Look, we've it's crazy to sit here and say, well, of course he's going to come back. Right? We don't know. Anything can happen with somebody's recovery from a major injury like this. But I mean, let's be honest. This happened mid-October. I mean, if you expect even a 6-month recovery, which is longer than they said 5-month recovery. If you go another month just to make sure you get your basketball skills right, that's a 6-month. You're still start of the playoffs. There was so much time, and with the early start of the season, there was so much room for him to be able to fill that recovery window. And the fact that this team is contending, he left Utah, a team that was pretty decent, a team that made the playoffs, but he wanted to compete for championships. That's why he came here. He didn't come here to, just kind of run out the string and get another all-star nod. He came here for this explicit purpose to win a championship. And what happens after he gets hurt? They lose one more game. Tremendous run. Best team in the league for much of that, until this last week here where they finally got topped by Houston. But they're in the handful. They're in the conversation to win a championship this year. Is Gordon Hayward going to be fully healthy, but maybe mentally, or maybe he's at 95%, maybe he's 90%? Is he going to sit on the sidelines while the Celtics are running Shemi out there as kind of the first forward off the bench? No, of course not. If he's anywhere near healthy, he's going to play. He's going to do what he was here to do. And he's not going to be the same Gordon Hayward we saw in Utah, but he'll be a really important member. And we talk about Marcus Morris in the first part of the show. Is there someone who could do that job and 10 times better than Gordon Hayward? So I
You know what
don't
I
think
think
that there's any reason why you wouldn't want him to come back, and why you wouldn't, they're not going to rush him back if there's a chance he could re-injure.
Exactly. I
But
was just
whatever
going to
I
say,
read, that's not happening.
as long as they've eliminated the re-injury risk aspect of it, I suppose there's always risk, or there's overcompensation, on the stronger side risk. There's all of that.
Right.
If they clear all of those issues, and it's really just a matter of him getting reconditioned, getting comfortable and confident, they're going to roll him out there, and they'll let him have a more limited role, and they'll see what he's capable of, and they'll game around it. But we saw him shooting from a chair. That's one thing, even without, I know a lot of times the shot is really dependent on the lift and his ability to get off of that foot and get high enough with a high release, etc. But I think a shooter's always a shooter. And I think he'll at least contribute that. When you look at the offensive woes on that second unit, he'll at least help. He'll at least help in that regard. That's a bare minimum. As long as the re-injury or overcompensation injury risk is minimal to non-existent, it's all good. The part where I actually think the team and Hayward benefit the most is that he gets a head start on the offseason and building that confidence. One of the concerns for me is that if he gets into that offseason, he's not really going to be doing full workouts over the course of the summer. They'll probably play it safer, or he might even have that. He'll go hard, but it's just different than playing ball. It's different than getting up and down the floor. And I think if he can get out there, even in limited minutes, to be safe in the postseason, that he will be just that much more ready to start next year. And this team will have a pretty good idea of just how successful that they can be at full strength. It really is unfortunate he got hurt, because I just think all of these injuries, they'd be weathering that storm. You've already seen Brad take the liberty of giving people nights off. He might have already done that. They had one of the fastest, most games crammed in to the schedule. And we're going to talk about the upcoming week, but it doesn't get any better. They've got another back-to-back. I mean, the benefit of this year was limiting the number of back-to-backs, but I feel like this trip overseas has robbed them to some degree. I mean, it's taking its toll on the team, just how jammed in this schedule is. And were they to have somebody like Hayward, Horford, and Irving all healthy, Brad would be rotating nights off for those guys.
Oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, he would find a way to get for the same reason you and I talked a lot about how that second unit would work or not work well. And I think you've been proven right in that, in saying, look, if you had plugged Hayward into that second unit, not only would those guys, would you be able to maintain a more consistent level throughout, and we certainly saw in the Chicago